to the Universal Ones Artist Collective. I am your host, Buddy James. Please don't forget to subscribe and like our channel. And always, if you like our content, hit that bell because that's how we get seen. Thank you again. Enjoy the episode.
All right. Season 1, Episode 14. We have Brighton Kotter. Brighton Kotter. Check it out. A mathematician and so many big things to come after this. Excited. Recording. Here it is.
Is this live or is this
This is not live. This is just you and me. I typically don't use my my video, but it's fine right now because this gives the audience something to look at. Well, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, this is going to be an episode introducing Brighton and I, and telling you a little bit of the back history here, I think. So here we go. This is Brighton Kotter. Why don't you tell them a little bit about yourself, maybe how we came to meet, how you found some of the, I don't know, the directions of where you're at here.
Well, I have a passion for geometry, and that's where I find myself today. From that passion, Buddy and I connected on Facebook about, what was that, 2 years ago? And just the other week, we met for the first time at the Walter Russell Museum of Philosophy and Science. And it was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. There was so much learned there. And wow. Yeah, the museum was absolutely phenomenal. And so we decided to do this podcast, and that's where we are today.
Perfect. Well, that's a bit of trimming the fat and carving the beef here, getting down to the gristle. I like that. I like that about you. So yeah, there's been some brief dialogue between us, back and forth. Brighton has discovered some things with the geometry that I'm working with, and he's even showed that to the public, straight up, what he's found, and he has shown me a couple of things about some of the discoveries. And yeah, you had not really heard of Walter Russell before this, so you came out there to see me, right? Pretty much. And yes. Which I was very grateful to have a fan. I had some fans there for sure, but someone that was just directed towards me. That was an honor, and I was very grateful to have you and your mom show up. And I love your mom. I love you guys, man. Just in general, dude. These guys are great. So to let the audience know, yeah, we met, we hung out, and immediately we went out to, they invited me to dinner, and they paid for my dinner, invited me to dinner, and then they're like, dude, you have to come over. And I'm like, man, like when? They're like, tomorrow. I'm like, like we're in the middle of this conference, and I'm like, Pittsburgh, yeah, it's kind of on the way home, I guess. Yeah. It actually, I passed through there on the way here, so why not? And then we spent some time together, got to know each other, and got a little tour around Pittsburgh. That was great. So anyway, I digress. I got a little back into some details. So moving forward, I guess there's a million directions we could take this. I don't want to get too much into the tech and discovery end of where we are, but maybe just kind of, and I also hate being surface level. so,
Yeah.
so like,
Between depth and yeah, okay.
yeah, so we can really take it wherever. What really got you into geometry?
I have always had a fascination in lines and shapes, but it all really started passionately last year uh, with poison ivy. Now, I've gone out in the woods on a camping trip in local woods here in Pennsylvania and walked into some poison ivy and got covered head to toe. And from that experience, because my adrenals were all worn out and some other things in my body, it kind of pushed my body to the very edge. And so I had a near-death experience or a DMT experience, and that is where that's that's straight where all of my ideas have come from for the past year, where I've been passionately drawing and trying to model the concepts that I saw on that experience. Um, and also researching the how how it is that poison ivy or how it is that the near death experience can be even created in the body is absolutely fascinating. You said you were doing Kundalini, right?
Yes, I was introduced to it by a female, and she didn't like teach me how to do it, but I guess in a way she did, because it's like
You
the
want
way
to tell
she
everybody what Kundalini is?
the way she was breathing really kind of turned me on into the idea of what the rhythm is of Kundalini. Um, Now, my perception of Kundalini, and this is everybody has their own subjective experiences. So to try to collectively say that something's this way or another is, um, that's why there's words for things. Like a near-death experience is different than an out-of-body experience. These are both very visceral and spiritual. Um, uh, and all of these types of experiences, they're growing. They're like a propitiation of growth from from one state to another, like like a magnitude of level jumping, like uh being able to become a different person or a different being constantly. Now, the Bible talks about this all the time, all the way through from beginning to end. It's we're new creatures, we're new creatures, we're new creatures in God. So the deeper you can dive into God or into the well, the more God teaches you about yourself, because you're diving into infinity. And as you dive into infinity and go beyond, which most people are afraid of, and as soon as you start, it's addictive. Uh, but most almost anything can become a form of addiction.
Leonardo da Vinci has this one quote where it goes on to say, once you have tasted the flight, it goes along these lines. Once you have tasted the flight, you know, you'll never want to return. You'll always want to taste the flight again.
Yeah, and that's kind of like some of the presentation material from the uh, I don't want to destroy or botch her name. I forget. So we'll leave it at that right now. But she was an author and a presenter at the, the museum there, and she was talking about out of body experiences and near death experiences. And and how real they are. And I've had some, and even talking about these, people talking about these, you actually start to remember that you have some. Like everybody has them.
Oh yeah.
And coming out of the vagina, like as a baby, we that is a traumatic event. That is an NDE. That's becoming a new creature. Now, this rebirthing, this constant rebirthing, or like which I guess cosmonauts or different type of eccentric thinkers would say is a rebirthing, or even a Christian type of thinking. We can go and grow from glory to glory to glory, and on our journey from glory to glory is these us becoming universal creatures larger than our imagination of a being. And you can go into these infinite tendrils and infinite roots and dimensions. I stray away from the word dimension because it's hard for people to really take it in.
We
But
should
dimension,
talk about that because there's quite a few ways to explain dimensions and like Hausdorff dimensions
mhm.
between dimensions. I'd like to get back to that, but please keep going as you were.
So, um, I guess to get to the root of the matter is it's these microvisal networks inside of the soil that is retaining the morphogenetic fields and morphogenetic memories of all creatures. It's in the soil, it's in the placement of the trees, it's in the dispersion of the trees in a natural forest. The conifers, how they lay in between in a certain pattern, the fractal distribution of, if you can measure the height of one tree in a forest, and if you can measure the height of one tree, uh, some I can't remember the exact math of it, but logarithmically you can figure out every other tree in the entire forest based off of like the height and width of one tree, and how many more of it exists, and of how many more progeny or facsimiles of the tree exists in that area. Um, which I thought was kind of cool when I learned that.
That
Uh,
is incredible.
but my mind, I guess, is trying to go towards these tendrils of these filaments, and I think fractally. Therefore, I am fractally, fractality, and this is what everything is. Name something that is not a fractal, and then the next question is
Me. Um,
and then the next question is, which is a completely different and maybe very similar question, is name something that is not electric and doesn't involve electric and its properties or electricity.
yeah, that is. I mean, when we look at fractals, we'll take a mountain for example. You have the whole mountain, and then as you're looking at the shale parts of the mountain, you'll see that there's smaller mountains in on that whole mountain, and then on those smaller mountains, they might have smaller, mounds on them, and those will have smaller and smaller mounds, and so you have mountains in inside mountains, on the whole series,
Mm-hmm.
or with a tree as it grows from the trunk and it goes up. And these are not perfectly self-similar fractals, and fractals are not all self-similar, but
Right. It doesn't have to be a perfect self-similar symmetry.
yeah, it just goes, there's a big trunk and the first set of branches, and then as it breaks onto one branch, you'll have the second set of branches, and the second branch out is the same as you go back to the first trunk and the first branch. It's the same thing, and then it branches out again and again and again, and you're seeing this pattern of branching that's going on, and it's self-similar in a way. It's not perfectly self-similar, but it has a system of self-similarity.
Absolutely. Um, and and we can see this on all scales when we go into the fine structure constant, which is the reason why there is life instead of no life. There's actually a number for this, which is what the hell? Like there's a concept and a number for the fine structure constant. And this number is the reason why there is life instead of no life in the universe. And it allows for there to be some sort of equilibrium and almost maintains that is life is a must inside of the system, as if there's something higher or higher order magnitude inside of the electromagnetism spectrum that's guiding it towards higher level thought creatures, like we are just light in the cycle of we are just one step in the cycle of light unfolding into all of these magnificent creatures. And as the majestic creatures become more and more tuned into the entirety of the fractal system, we'll start to naturally do what the trees do, and uh well, I don't know, I guess when you look at nature, it seems so clean. You can go out into nature and it's very raw, and it will kill you in a day. But hang one second. It's so just going on this sustainability kind of approach and idea is the entirety of nature always cleans up after itself, and there's no remainder to infinity. And it's always cleaning up after itself with life on all scales, like little sweepers. Every bug's a little sweeper, cleaning up a little area and being responsible for its and out of that, it necessitates the growth of other creatures just by moving around and creating sound and juxtaposing itself in its beetle shell or whatever its body is, as electricity flows through these conduits into these minimal energy configurations, which is what humans and everything else is. It's a plasmoid. Everything is a toroid. It's a tube torus. And it all comes down to cobordisms, which is the math term of tubes and studying how tubes branch. And yeah, so sorry, continue. Or I mean, sorry, you were saying something.
Our body, going on exactly what you were saying, how we would become more fractaline, and bringing this back to the beginning of the conversation, actually, Kundalini, chakras, all these imaginative systems. Well, first off, our whole body, you take a look at the brain and its structure, how it grows out in a certain pattern.
Like a fungus. If you look at it, it looks just like a fungus, our brain.
And then that mirrors in like the kidney, how the kidney grows, or how your gonads even, all these different components in our body grow through these same sort of systems, as if they're like the best
efficiency.
Sustainable.
Highest efficient, sustainable, yes. Maximum efficiency design, and definitely.
Now, bringing this back to the chakras, though, in the psychedelic, or the also called the near-death experience, a lot of people bring back, in fact, in Hinduism, the main culture with the chakra system and the gods, they bring it back to this this pressure that's going up the spine. When you do Kundalini, you have that pressure and that deep breath and that energy that's rising up your spine, right? And as you get more in tune with it, what happens is you start to feel it as if it's sort of like a fractal, where if I take one line, one hole, and it has two halves that are equal. So or we divide this by half, and it has two halves that are equal, and it's a system of branching, but it's on a vector. So, or your whole spine, or with the kundalini that's spinning that's going on, and it feels like it's getting tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter. And what's going on? Yeah, you're feeling like your body's turning into a fractal, and it's being pulled, and it's a very geometric feeling of pressure in that system. But go ahead.
Yeah, it's like the caduceus, and there's 33 vertebrae inside of the spine, side of the human spine, and you can access it through breath, almost instantaneously. And song has a way to make that happen like nothing else really can. There's a song, or you can even hit it with a note. And if you're in tune sympathetically with the vibratory nature of it, like the vacuum, you'll go nuts like when it turns on, because like that's when you're too in tune. So we have to break up these resonances, and we have to be able to disassociate with horrible news in the news on mass scale manipulation, and disassociate to know that whether that might affect us on a large or a whole scale, and at the end of the day, we got to take home our prize, and we got to be the prize winner, and we got to make sure we get the bread and butter, and take care of our families. So we need to be impervious to all of this electrosmog that plagues so many people. We need to be able to be impervious to our devices that are in our pockets, so as not to use them as a detriment, but to use them to
as a healing tool.
Oh my gosh, and a world connecting mycelial network of growth. It is that fractal filament and frequency. There's the frequency. You add the frequency, you got the device. And I mean, all systems come from the sun, and are braided from the sun to harmonically cascade here on Earth inside of the Schumann cavity. And this place that we exist in it harmonically induces life into sexed paired mates of double helical filaments. And every single one of them has a number and a signature, and they're all unique. Like every human is unique, every animal is unique, every atom is unique. A carbon atom is not a carbon atom. It's like a carrot is a carrot is a carrot is a carrot, but they all look different. They're all different. You feel them, and they all taste a little different. An atom is an atom is an atom is an atom, like our mind normally thinks of a carbon atom as a carbon atom as a carbon atom. No, they're all individual and unique. They all have what creates the snowflake effect as the individual snowflakes is they travel and they get beat up and torn up, and they have a memory through their life cycles. So we have these infinite regressive life cycles that we can expand into and out of atomically on an atomic level through every atom in our body. You're part platypus, you're part we were talking about you being out in Australia and you seeing a platypus and stuff, the physics of it and everything. They're crazy creatures. But that's one of the things I say that's in my body. And one of the things, we resonate with certain creatures because we might have a preponderance of those atoms that were once nested inside of a platypus or a T-Rex. Or then you go and you lay down with all these super psychic people or whatever, and they start telling you about this past life regression therapy. And then you're a pterodactyl and you're remembering all sorts of crazy shit and how many times the earth has gone through catastrophic catastrophic cycles,
Are we talking about
morphogenetic memory and cyclical.
symbiogenesis?
What's that?
Symbiogenesis.
It might be.
Symbiogenesis is like, um, okay,
I call it molecular.
Genesis, the beginning.
Uh-huh.
So like the symbiogenesis of a snail, it goes back through its animal kingdom phylum all the way back, and I think that a major part of the experience is actually experiencing symbiogenesis itself. Like the
Ah.
he brings us back to the beginning. It's like we're going back, you know, and seeing a sense of creation. And
Okay.
and with our genetic code, and our genetic code is branched off in all sorts of different ways in history, but it keeps that memory.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's similar memory to what was the structure of the dinosaur that we came from, you know, and the T-Rex, as you were saying, or whatnot, and it goes all the way back to the very first worm that was struck by lightning, or however the first life form was created. But
Mm-hmm.
genetic
And
code passes down memory all the way down to now.
it's necessary creature stacking is what I call it. That's what the soil is, dude. It's creature stacking.
Creature stacking.
And we why do we forget this? How many generations of biomass has accumulated? And here, particularly in Michigan, I have this saying here, lake effect intelligence, like lake effect snow or lake effect wind. We have all this stuff that we, particularly in Michigan, have some of the richest soil in the entire world because and the memory, morphic resonant memory in the soil and rocks, because uh, it was the largest living barrier reef on the planet. Largest. So you got to remember that's the most creatures in the planet in the world existed here over Michigan than anywhere else in the planet. Uh,
You know what age this was?
What's that?
You do know what age this was? What
I don't know what age. No, there's so many ages here that are in Michigan. There's a lot to look up on the geological scale.
Okay.
It is the best place to look for rocks, though, they say, and one of the best in the world because it has a diversity of so much from all of the glacial till, and it being a sedimentary, like it was a mud puddle and then it dried up at one time at the very end there. But this intelligence that is inside of these crystalline forms inside of the ground and the soil, there's so much that has been produced here in Michigan and right around Michigan. You know, you have the automobile, the Wright brothers. I mean, I hate to go from them to music, but you have Motown, you have Michael Jackson, you have Eminem, you have Madonna, you have it's where the light bulb, Thomas Edison. I mean, there's collective intelligence in places, and not many people I've heard with who have these theories of these ley lines. The thing with ley lines is you can lay them anywhere you want on the planet and say that it's resonant with this ley line because I set up my grid this way. You know what I mean? However you want to set up the grid, but there is real ways to set them up, you know, north, south, actual magnetic north and things like that, how to lay out your grids. But there's definitely a lot happening here in Michigan in the soil, and that's a long-winded explanation of that. But to go back to one more thing that I wanted to say, which is on an atomic level, uniqueness. It's atomic uniqueness, and that can be part of what forms electricity as water, as the memory beating through everything. So if electricity is water, what is fire? Is fire electricity too? It's plasma. It's all just the same thing. I think it's all just the same
It's a
construct.
vortex. Maybe fire is the vortex of the system.
Oh, it's all vortical, bro. The vortical coordinate system. The rivers, the meandering rivers, the vortexes and the meandering rivers. So the water has a vortex structure, the vortexture. Lightning has vortexture. Fire has vortexture. And that was the name of my one of the highlighting points that I wanted to bring home in my presentation is that everything is vortexture. That's all it is. And it springs off of the vortices that create the donuts, that create the helices, that create, there's an emergent geometry that comes out of it. And we are just a process crystal in this process geometry that's a cascade. And it's always cascading.
Our spine. The cascading effect, the vortexes, the fractals, all of these systems, the electricity that we feel in our body. For those that have had a near-death experience, we have these systems in our spine, these components in our spine called toroidal plexus centers. And at every heartbeat, they secrete something called cerebrospinal fluid into the spine. And that cerebrospinal fluid, it creates this pressure that builds up in the spine. And that pressure applies to where there are nervic clusters. So like the base of your spine, the tailbone, you know, or your right where your solar plexus is, which is your solar nervic cluster, it starts sending electrical flares there, and these electrons go pinging throughout all your neurons, and you're feeling this pressure, this sensation of energy just resonating throughout your entire body. And it goes on to the piezoelectric properties of our muscles and our whole nervic system. Well, this pressure that goes up the spine, as it starts building up the spine, the cerebrospinal fluid, as it's building pressure up the spine, it reaches the medulla oblongata, and then rises, which then activates the cranial toroidal plexus center, secreting more CSF, and rises up and applies pressure to the pineal gland.
Is it actually toroidal?
It is toroidal. It is.
Okay.
It is absolutely toroidal because it goes straight up like this.
Okay.
And then it flushes down your spine as well. And if you look at the how the spine works, there's a cavity where cerebrospinal fluid goes up, and there's a channel where it goes back down. And so when you go to sleep at night, you get into when you get into a delta or theta mind wave states, it activates this pressure, this cerebrospinal fluid drainage. And during the day, your brain doesn't get drained. Cerebrospinal fluid stays stagnant. But at night is when it drains the cranial, your brain. The cerebrospinal fluid drains from there. And so when you get into those deep meditative states or near-death states, that is also what causes that, like it's almost like cranial inflammation, but it's actually cerebrospinal fluid just draining. And what it does is it applies pressure to the pineal gland and the hypothalamus. And when it applies pressure to the hypothalamus, you have something called the Kundalini fire, which is where you'll have hunger, irregularities, temperature irregularities, and sexual irregularities. You'll have desires or for all of these, you know. And the pineal gland, which is where it gets really interesting, is a literal eye rod, and it's piezochromatic. So when pressure is applied, it changes color. So not only that, but the pineal inside your pineal gland, when they secrete, they are piezoelectric and piezoluminescent. So when pressure is applied to them from the cerebrospinal fluid, it piezio means with pressure, and electric, it illuminates electricity.
So is this in the form of biophotons? Okay, I guess my question is, I guess my question is, where does the light go from the piezoelectricity that's harnessed inside of the pineal gland? Does it come out our eyes? Does it come out our hands? Does it come out our bioplasma field?
It comes straight outside the pineal gland, and the pineal gland will literally see the light. So the piezoluminescence of the pineal are secreted, and they let off light inside the center of our brain. And along with the DMT chemical, meaning that our pineal gland, as a literal eye rod, can see the light being illuminated from the pineal and we'll see the DMT chemical.
And this is color when we dream, and the kaleidoscopic vision. Yeah. This is why we dream.
And also that Tibetan sound, like the ring of a Tibetan singing bowl, dong, you know, that sound.
Yeah.
Or the humming in your head, kind of similar to, is it called tinnitus? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, that is the piezoelectric property of the pineal. When the pressure is applied, they create that humming because the electricity that's being illuminated, it's creating a humming sound. And so that's what that sound is.
Okay. Interesting. So it's the ohm.
Oh yeah, that is the ohm. Yes.
Okay. Now we're getting home here. Home. Exactly. Now, and if anybody's ever met the Rainbow Gathering or the Rainbow Group, they do a lot of ohming. I've met a lot of cats here and there, and they by far surpass the amount of ohming I've been around. They do a lot of ohming. I like it. And I went around and did a lot of ohming after that. It's good for you.
Oh, it's wonderful. Actually, during my trip from the poison ivy, all natural DMT trip, all naturally created in the body, and I wrote this one thing because if you put Om up, see, my whole spine was in so much pain, and I was in so much pain because of all the poison ivy over my entire body. And I wrote this thing down, which was Om, and I went really long, you know, and I said it again, Om, and I realized if you invert this, it becomes ow, it becomes ouch, you know, ow, ow, but it also becomes mom.
Okay.
Yeah, it was something just weird, something funky.
Well, and did you find that when you ohmed, it soothed you and made you feel better through your pain?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, continue on that thought, and then I'll tell you my experience of that.
Actually, you go ahead and tell me your experience.
Okay, well, it's just a simple one. I had a stomach ache, and I started ohming, dude, because it wouldn't go away, and I'm like, man, this feels really bad. I started ohming, and it soothed it, and then I stopped, and then I was like, yeah, it starts feeling worse, and then I ohmed, and the only way that I could get the pain away was ohming, and then I was able to fall asleep.
Oh yeah, it works like that. It's magical.
It's like purring of a cat. It's the natural, like there's an octave or something, you know, there is that frequency part of the filaments, because in my mind I think of everything as either it's a node or it's a filament. That's a really simple way to think of the universe. If you look at all of everything throughout the universe so far, collectively, what we know, basically what I feel like I know, the only thing I might understand is that there's nodes and filaments, and and that's all that and you can create the entire universe based off of nodes and filaments. And
Would
the
you
network
elaborate
itself,
exactly
the
to us?
network, hang on, the filament itself is a hologram of the node, and the node is a hologram of the higher dimensional filament, and it takes the filament to create the node. And your body is all filled with atoms, and every atom is a node. That's it. That's all it is. All
Okay.
atoms are nodes, and it nodes up. So the same structure that is the filament becomes a node, and then it unfolds, and the light unfolds and becomes a filament again back into the ether. So
So I'm bringing up the exact definitions. So a node is a point where a line intersects a branch. It's an intersecting point,
mhm,
a junction, and then a filament is like a whole piece, right?
mhm. A filament is like uh, uh it's really a four-dimensional
Yes, it's like a slender fiber. So this is kind
yeah.
of like uh, yeah, like waveforms between where they meet. If you look at it like a sine wave, the node is where they meet, and the filament is the wave.
Yes, yes. And all harmonics and resonance can and already has been deciphered into many different types of mathematical languages. One of them, Hartmut Muller did himself, called global scaling, and you can see his whole thing on global scaling in his book that was released in 2018. They threw him in jail for quite a bit because that's what they do with these type of people, for trying to say that he was committing fraud because he was making millions of dollars. And he actually started a GCOM company. He was working for the government, Hartmut Muller, and his stuff that he was working with was classified for 20 years, and then it was declassified, and he was the one that put it all together. So he came out and started teaching people about it.
United
Uh,
States government.
no, Russian government. He was either Russian or German. I believe he was Russian, but they shut down his operations because he started getting into these telecommunication systems where you could encryption, where your security, basically security systems, so that you couldn't hack it because there's infinite numbers on nodes. And he did it the same way, as very similar to the ways of the Dougherty set is laid out, into oscillating chains, uh, oscillating harmonics on a chain, on a grid, uh, and or in a line. But yeah, his stuff is great, and now he's out of jail and or prison or whatever he was doing, and he's one of the people that I want to communicate with on the planet. There's like four people that I want to definitely reach out to and put my work past, and Roger Penrose is one of them, and for quite a few reasons. Roger Penrose. Ah, I like your pendant there. Yeah, look at that,
Yeah,
Morel.
I've been wearing it. I love this.
Oh, nice, nice. That's great. Your mom's like, your mom's probably like, I get to wear that.
Yeah,
You
we
guys, I gotta get both you guys one of those.
uh, okay. Let's see if I can screen share here.
Yeah, please do. This is where it starts to get good, if it wasn't good already.
Now, I've held this deep fascination in Leonardo da Vinci, and I think his work on the Vitruvian Man is incredible. It really ties together how the human body relates to the universe, you know, in these constants that the proportions of how, you know, universal constants that determine how black holes work, or the Euler's constant or whatnot, and we're finding them in the Vitruvian Man. Also, geometric properties, like the flower of life, for one. If I bring this up, this is something that it took me quite a while to find, this right here. But you take a look at the Vitruvian man. Let me see if I can pull up a clean. Yeah, right here. This is a clean sheet. Okay, so as we pull this up, we'll see that Leonardo da Vinci highlighted the flower of life in his structure, the Sephirot tree of life.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll see these stars, one here, one here, one here, 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 yeah. And when we put those points over all of those, we get this perfect flower of life structure. And it is pinpoint accurate with the center of those stars that he drew in here. And those stars aren't on the regular, the human body, when you look at the human body.
Yeah.
But elaborating on that further, it took me quite a while to put this whole thing together, because I looked at this for a whole year solid. And the Vitruvian man is based on 9/11s. So to explain that better, the side length of the square is 9 to the diameter of the circle is 11. Or you could do that by radius another way, and it would be 11/18. And then it came to my attention that Eliphas Levi did the exact same thing. And his diagram is based on the exact same proportions perfectly. And
is this Anton LaVey? Who did it?
Eliphas Levi.
Okay, is that the first person to draw the Baphomet like this?
Yes, Eliphas Levi I believe he was the first person to draw the Baphomet like this. Yeah.
Interesting.
The Baphomet before was a pentagon with the Baphomet head in it, and you take a look at that symbol, the Baphomet head, and it becomes apparent that it's upside down. It's actually the human body, and the beard was to represent like fire, and it was actually symbolic of the Kundalini fire, that irregularity in temperature when the hypothalamus gets hit by that pressure of the cerebrospinal fluid, and your head goes on fire. It feels like it's on fire, and your body is just having all these temperature irregularities, and then you hit the psychedelic trip like that, boom, you're up. All naturally created in the body, all natural.
Now, I want to emphasize to the audience here, you haven't done these drugs, right?
I have not done these drugs, no. I've only done them within my body, only self-synthesized in my own body.
Because that's important here, because a lot of people say, hey, look at these druggies talking about stuff, but these are self-induced. I mean, a lot of people could say that, but you self-induce these experiences that you continue to have, or are these, or was this from that one experience with poison ivy?
Well, that one experience with poison ivy gave me the most vivid visuals that I'd ever, so a lot of it's from there, but since it's as if like I'm connected to some magnetosphere energy or geometry or something, and I just keep getting updates.
Okay. Universal like updates, like go ahead.
I'm looking for something. I don't know if my screen is still sharing, is it?
Yes, it is. I'm watching everything that you're doing.
Okay. Well,
but can you make it full size?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
I'm looking for the Baphomet in relation to the brainstem, because when you read Eliphas Levi, his own.
Who is this guy? Who is that's what I wanted to ask you. And the whole thing, if you could make the whole thing your screen, it's just better for the viewers.
Yeah.
To see.
It's full screen right now.
It is.
Okay.
Oh, maybe like on the outside. Or maybe it's just the way I'm viewing it on my thing. Okay, go ahead. So who is this person?
Well, Eliphas Levi is a philosopher. He was he he worked with Helena Blavatsky,
Okay.
and there's quite a lot of information to dig up on him. I would get straight to his work, explaining his work, because that's, see, with the Baphomet, he stated that the uh, that the symbol he drew represented etheric light, astral. What was it? Yeah, it was either astral light or etheric light. And it becomes apparent when we look into that he actually meant the piezo-luminescence of the pineal gland, the pineocytes, as they say.
Okay, but okay, that aside, that's cool. But this dude, is he a Satanist? Does he eat children? Does he believe that the highest form of illumination is sacrificing people? What's the deal here? Because it looks like similar to satanic work and the Baphomet, where we are today in 2019.
Eliphas Levi, he has been said to be a Satanist, yes, but I do not see his work from that perspective. I only look at it from the philosophical perspective.
How can you ignore these dark? Okay, I have to get into this first before we get into this. How can you ignore this dark stuff about this gentleman and continue to I don't, yeah, I don't know if you're ignoring it or just
well,
purposefully pointing a blind eye to it, because I study a lot of different stuff, and I've studied Blavatsky a lot, and I've studied Anton LaVey and all of the other different characters throughout time who've masqueraded, who are basically jesters or fools that that play the audience. And I'm interested in this character here because I don't know anything about him. Okay. I don't want to misjudge him.
Yes, a lot of people are afraid of his work because he is a Luciferian, a Satanist, something along those lines.
Yeah.
But all of that stuff, all the Satanism, all these concepts, when you start to study the actual works, it becomes very apparent, very clear that what they were actually studying, if they're not an absolute, if their work is actually serious, because there's some stuff that's absolute nonsense, but a lot of these works, they relate to science. They are about science. Like the Sigil of Lucifer is not about Satan and some higher being, angel, God. No.
Which is, hang on, I have to interject it, which is the symbol for Google Play Store. The Sigil of Lucifer is the exact symbol.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll continue. Go ahead.
No, I'm not a Satanist. I'm just a philosopher. I'm not a Luciferian or any of this. I don't even this. I have a different opinion of what this magic is, and I think it's more mathematical based.
Well, it does create power. There's one thing about it. There's one thing without a doubt about it. There's power. There's dark power and there's light power. There's white power and black power, and there's gray power. So, it is a thing. So continue. I hate to interject again, but
okay.
As you go through, you can't remain gray the whole time, even though Alex Gray calls himself gray and he defines quite a bit of territory. There's some spookiness out there. So
some spookiness.
Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Okay. From my study, it becomes apparent that all this stuff has been put into the term of Satanism, and it's about science. With the Sigil of Lucifer, the sigil represents how sight works, how optics work, how even umbra penumbra, how trigonometric parallax. So,
Yeah.
so if you have a sun here, the sun, and the moon here, and then the Earth, it functions the same as an eyeball would, where the sun, it creates this light and it goes across and it meets at the apex of the fulcrum, and light interjects, and so you have it's a mechanic. And with the
It's a symbol. It's a symbol for light. Well,
the
yeah,
symbol
Lucifer's the light bearer.
how light works with
Yeah.
the sun, with your eye, with all sorts of systems.
Okay.
And this study becomes very apparent. That's what all these are about. And it's absolutely just baffling how many of these symbols in these topics relate back to the brain, and especially the pineal gland. And I think the baphomet is one of the most incredibly drawn symbols in its relations, because when you look at it, and I am the only one, I've tried looking online, and haven't found anybody else to do this. I think I'm the only one who has diagrammed this relation. So if anybody else has, I would love to know. But it's that the baphomet, and it is clear as day, where his elbows, where his knees meet, and all the contours of the man, of the baphomet, the beast. The pons, they line up with the pons, and the medulla oblongata. It's the brainstem. It's the brainstem. The entire thing is the brainstem. The ladder, or the kundalini going up the rod, the caduceus on him. There's like a ladder-like structure in the brainstem.
But all of those symbols are just symbols that are taken from other figures and Christed figures throughout ages. The Baphomet is a well-studied figure that was created from other iconoclastic figures throughout history. If you look at it, it's just a usurpage of a symbol, really, is what it comes down to. And the new Sabrina, the Teenage Witch, or I think it was that show, was using the Baphomet, and the Church of Satan sued the television company that produced the new Sabrina. I think it was Netflix. The Church of Satan sued Netflix, and they won because of using the symbol. And it's just like, I mean, like, we are in 2019, where in America, religions, I think we're starting to realize the exercising of religious freedom, whereas before there were powers that laid their hands and their feet down and said, sorry, we're not letting this in yet. And now it's the time to open up the doors, and the inundation of this kinds of information is going to continue to that looks like a fly's face with the eyeballs. The continuing of this inundation of information is just going to continue to come out. But yes, well, I mean, they started Lucius Trust, and so this guy was a bit like worked hand in hand with Blavatsky, or
yes, he did.
Okay.
I'm trying to pull something up here. Let's see. Let's see. Here we go. And I'm going to pull up the wiki. This picture right here, because it's the original right there. Okay. So as you can see here, if I put these side by side, this here on the green structure right here, this is the brainstem. Can you see my screen well here? Is it all full?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if there's a higher way to put. You better plug your computer in. I see your battery. If there's a better way to if it's on full, it's on full for you. I don't think I can change. Okay, I don't think I can do anything to make on my end. So it looks good. It's coming through clear. Go ahead.
Okay, so this ladder here, I can't. I studied all of this like 2 years ago, and now I've forgotten it. You know.
Jacob's Ladder, like that name
Yeah.
of that?
But
Okay.
it's not Jacob's ladder. I'm trying to name the actual component, but yeah, it can be related to that electrical component. That's here, right? And then the pawns up these components right here. Those are the knees that raise up, and then you'll see how, and the fire where the there's being secreted. The DMT lines up right here, and the pawns right where the Baphomet's tits are. Well, and then in other relation, if you look at the brain over this way, it also relates this way, where right where the genu corpus callosum is, the Baphomet's knees are. And genu means knee. Genu means knee. So that's where the term genuflect came from, or
Okay.
kneeing down when you go to church. And then the pineal gland would be right where this is. So it's actually like a third-dimensional symbol. It'd be right where the center of the caduceus is, instead of right where the star is in this other diagram. Oh, this other diagram. So it kind of shows the brain in two different perspectives, and it shows the mirror effect, how the brain duplicated itself on the x and y axis, or how you'll have a system like how the brain's like the kidney is like, other systems, how these systems repeat.
Dude, maybe we can call Sandro and get him on the call right now. I could dial him up, but like he's right here just on the in the phone book of Skype. But that's neither here nor there. But I see there's so many different relations in his mirror model, and then you said mirror as the brain. But go ahead, continue.
Oh, I was just gonna say, don't you have a party coming up soon?
Oh, I thank you for looking out about that. I looked into it, and it doesn't start until around 7. We're gonna show up fashionably late at about 8.
Okay. Well, going back to all these topics with the, I don't know if you can still see my screen. I'm pretty sure you can.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is based on the 9/11 model, and in the Renaissance age, they used fractions instead of decimals because they didn't have decimals back then. And so 9/11 was the best Da Vinci could do at that time with fractions. But there's some other diagrams that are absolutely incredible where they show that the area of the square is the Euler constant, Euler.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And then the radius is to 1. Radius is 1. So, and that brings about this topic that I was saying, how the human body, but not just the human body, all things, we find perfect alignment, fractal, harmonic, whatever you want to call that, it to the universe. The universe finds the best way to compose us.
And that is why they call it the fine structure constant, because it's fine tuned.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, there it is a fine tuning, and tuning we all are doing at all times. We are people of station, men of station, women of station, and we can tune in and we can tune out to any type of station that we so desire to.
Synesthesia.
Mm-hmm. I think it can be taught. They think that it can't, but I've heard varying results. And there's a test. There's a real test to see if you are or if you aren't. And it works really well. So I believe I partially am. My daughter thinks she is. I know that I am, to the extent that all of the forms of art are merging into one for me. Like uh, video editing, making videos, making music, doing geometry, coloring, uh, being out in nature. Really, they're all just kind of blending into uh, like one. I'm I don't call myself things, but sometimes I do. Uh, and
As you label yourself, you limit your potential.
right,
Yeah.
but it's weird because you have to use the I am, so you have to let yourself know as a reminder, like I am an author, I am a geometer, I am a, a podcast, you know, a YouTuber, I am this. I am. The more things you see and you write down that you can see for yourself, you can see those, then you can move on, but you got to recognize it and you got to let yourself know that you are, so that you can move on and continue to become. That's what I see. It's kind of what I see it as. But if you write that down, it's like it's therapy for what who you, if you just took a minute, it like took 25 minutes, 10, 20 minutes and
What
wrote down
this, I am that, I am this, I am that.
who you were,
Yeah.
who you are, I am, and then who you will be. That's the secret key into the what was is will be. And the what was is will be is how God works, because all things are process crystal.
What was
Because
is will be. That's a wonderful saying.
thank you. It is trademarked. What was is will be, and there's places that you can go to like this, like Begidland, beginning, middle, and end. It's a place in the universe, Begidland, and we're always there. And we're part of that process crystal and the systolic pulsating nature of all fractal branching systems. Uh, and then that branches out. You reflect it in your heart, you see it, you recognize it, you know it. I am water, I am that dog, I am that river, I am that fossil, I am that wolf that carved the river to make that pattern that way, that produced so much more fish in the stream through trophic cascades. I am, you know. And then you just keep going deep and deep and deep, and then you start remembering how resonant you are, and you can move past those. Every single time the earth gets to such a wonderful point, that the catastrophism that comes along with it, only for the reorganization of life to create new systems. And the systems that are the strongest, the systems that are the most unique, the most novel, nature preserves novelty. So that's why we are humans, trying to teach us humans what's maximum potential for humans. And that's why we have awards and Olympics, and I'm stronger than you're stronger, my government beats up your government. I don't know. I I just digress thinking about the infinite memories.
Okay. Um, a major component of, see, I've heard this saying before, I am, I am, I am, and I've seen it from people talking about the psychedelic experience or the NDE experience. I call them both the same. From at least my personal experience and my study, I think that it is DMT.
Mm-hmm.
That's the NDE. Um, Now, your brain, uh, a component of it that holds your ego is, or does what we'd call it, the I, or the associative. When we associate ourselves to something, associative properties in our brain, that part of our brain starts to shut down. And on the experience, okay? And so when you think, oh, I am a Libra and I have, and I do this and that, and you think so many things, and that's where we are today, where we stand. We relate ourselves to an ocean of concepts. But as soon as that starts breaking down, all we can do left is say, I am, I am, I am.
And that's the beginning of philosophy, yeah. Socrates.
It breaks down until there is no self. But a really strong component that people keep coming back to, and I've seen so many people talk about the I am, and they say, and they'll write these stories of I am, and reading their stuff is crazy to listen to. But
yeah,
understanding where it comes from, how that part of the brain shutting down, and then when you've surpassed that I am state, you reach this state of there is no self, there is nothing to associate with. It is all synesthetic. It's all monistic. It's all, synthesized into one amalgamate. And I in fact, from some other of my readings, it becomes kind of apparent that Taoism originated from mushrooms and DMT exploration, where how monism came out into dualism. And it is absolutely wonderful seeing how, because these monks, they used to go inside of caves, and there's some Arabic and let's see, the Aborigines in Australia, the Greeks, they all do this similar process. The Egyptians too, where they go in a cave or a dark area, and they sit there for like a week in the dark. And in some cases they'd have candles, in some cases not. But the candles would produce similar electromagnetic frequencies to a solar flare. And a solar flare, when it produces all that electromagnetic frequency, it actually boosts melatonin production. And when you're in the darkness, you stop producing serotonin and you start producing melatonin. And so what happens, melatonin is what turns into MEO5 DMT. And then MEO5, so like when you get to about 30 milligrams of melatonin in the pineal gland, it turns into MEO5. And then at about 25 milligrams of MEO5, it starts to synthesize into N-DMT, the pure DMT. But the N-DMT is what causes the synesthesia. And when we look at like symbols like Christ or the Buddha, the Christ, he had a 30-day fast before he was put up on the cross. And the Buddha, he had he fasted under the Bodhi tree for 30 days. And both of them
usually 40 days.
40 days. Okay.
Yeah.
40 days.
Yeah.
40
is important in number, so yeah, please don't ever forget that. That's extremely important right there.
I've also read that the Buddha, see, some say that he fasted for like 2 days, some say he fasted for 40, and some say he didn't fast at all. But going with the story, he fasted for 40 days under the Bodhi tree whilst meditating there, which absurd amount of time. But he hit the alma, the samadhi, the alma, the complete totality of synesthesia, where you cannot explain one thing from another, and there is no way to explain any of it. Any label would destroy the whole. You can't label any of it. So go ahead.
Well, to there's a way of reaching it through solitude. There's certain things that you can only reach through solitude, and that's part of the process. And then I noticed that there's also a group communicative effort that reaches and evokes spirits through dance, drum, and they dance until they start hallucinating, and they oftentimes start speaking to spirits, and they all see different spirits. They all have their own individual reality tunnels too.
The
So as
whirling
they're
Sufis,
hyperventilating, what's that?
like the whirling Sufis.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, yeah, like the whirling Sufis, whirling dervish.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
uh, uh, these dances that are natural in nature to creatures, not only the creatures themselves are carved out of the spheres, but the dances are also mimetic in the spheres as an image of itself, trying to show off the reason why the shape is the shape. Sure, the Vitruvian man is its shape, but have you seen the Vitruvian man moving? Now, there's secrets that Da Vinci came up with, and there's this, I can't remember the exact term of the name of, like, a Gaussian filter, like when you blur something, if you take the Vitruvian man and you double stack it as if you blur it a tiny bit, it has a plasma, a discharge body. uh I totally forgot about that until I just looked at it, sent from another friend of mine on my phone, and I think he discovered it. So I don't want to get too much into it. So I don't want to give up his,
Yeah.
uh, but he's the other mathematician that I was working with, and for a shout out to him because I talked about his concept. That's Jake, and you can find him. I don't. I You can find him through finding me and my relations through him before, because we no longer work together. We had a falling off or a difficult estrangement, I guess you could call it. Plasmoid attack. But anyway, that's neither here nor there, but it's actually in the center of everything, as we always are. Um, so I want to talk about this thumping, or the brain actually moving when the fluids come into it, because my
Oh,
friend
it's
Chad, my
so
friend,
fascinating.
hang on
Area.
one second, real quick. My friend Chad Seymour Morris, he give a shout out to him and his channel. He showed a video of the slowing down of they were able to show this fluid coming in, and then they somehow made it so you could see the vision macro, and you could see how much the brain was actually moving with every heartbeat, and it's crazy.
Like looking at the neurons and seeing the liquid as it pulsates.
Yeah, like the whole brain itself moves. The whole freaking brain moves every heartbeat. And
Absolutely.
this blew my mind. You think of the brain as like this kind of like semi-stable structure that never moves in your head, and it's like, yeah, it's connected to a cord. They tell you a brain cord, a brain stem. Oh, but that's nothing, and nothing really moves through that. Oh no, there's actually cerebral spinal fluid that comes pumping through that mofo, and your entire brain, every single time your heart palpitates, fluctuates, and that's orgasmic to me. um when I first saw that for the first time, because it's your brain that's ultimately controlling all of your heart, that's ultimately controlling all of your thoughts in your brain first, through your bioplasma field. So you think through your heart first, and then it pulsates through your brain, and then you think you have an idea, but really it's an extension of the field.
This reminds me of where how I got led to the concept of cerebral spinal fluid, applying that pressure in the brainstem. And I don't know why this is, or why they named it like this, but okay, pyramid means fire in the middle, or fire of the mind, is an alternative way of saying it, but it means fire in the middle. So there is a section of the cerebellum, and if you know anything about cerebellum, cherubim derived from the word, or vice versa, but there's two trees in the Garden of Eden, the tree of life and the tree of knowledge. And cherubim guard the tree of life, and the tree of knowledge has the serpent, you know.
Yeah.
And so inside the cerebellum, which is this back lobe underneath your occipital lobes, back here, there is a section called the pyramid in the cerebellum, a section that the Latins, you know, they named pyramid for whatever reason. And it's really weird how you look at how the cerebral spinal fluid comes in up the brainstem, and it goes past the cerebellum, and it's as if the whole brain is the Garden of Eden. If you've looked at like Michelangelo's work with the brain and man reaching out, or there's so many of these works, but all these people are saying that, you know, the brain is the Garden of Eden. The brain is where Genesis is located, where paradise and hell are both located.
Yeah, I've heard this concept before. There's proposed.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly who proposed it, but yeah, you know, it's.
But it is a beautiful concept, because we do make our own, however we perceive reality around us is.
Well, mind over matter.
We choose if we want to live in hell or heaven.
Yeah, it's mind over matter. That's heaven on earth, and we are already in heaven. Once we harness the zodiacal light and rewind it, and we're able to hop onto the fossilized neural networks of all light core samples that we receive from old light that falls down on the earth, and we rewind it using the correct technologies, we will be able to go inside of it and sense every creature's umbelt. We will be beetles. We will be bats. We will experience sonar for the first time experientially in our bodies on Earth in your bedroom. The technology of the new internet, which is what I propose is going to be the new internet, and whether this is created in my time or after, I'm going to keep talking about it and chasing the dragon until someone does it. And I believe that the geometry of the Dougherty set and the Dougherty network ultimately can and will lead us to be able to go into these filaments, like I so constantly talk about, and rewind light so we can experientially be these creatures. Because I think that once we are already equipped with sympathy, so we can sympathize with creatures in their environments easily. So when we start seeing all of these creatures and how they live, and planets, and how planets are conscious, and how planets are cute, and they like hit on other planets and stuff, and like they're communicating through these magnetospheres and these larger layers of plasmoids and plasma connections on Birkeland current size scale levels, and we start to see the reason why certain quasars are getting bright, because they're communicating, and there's larger stellar communications going on of things. I think we'll be bored with our existence, and sure, it'll take a little bit of time. What I'm talking about is being able to go into the akasha, basically, and traversable networks of filaments. And I believe that I developed the way in and way out, and I know open ways in and how to get in to the network and out, because it's collapsible, it's implosive, and it's an explosive. So therefore, we should be able to go through it, and it meaning instantaneously, without time delay or time lag, because right now it's just the idea of traversing the universe based off of the scaling law of light and the limits of the speed of light. It really puts a huge limit on the universe, and I don't think the universe is limited like that. And I know for a fact it's not, based off of deep research of going into these networks. So once we do create the correct machine to rewind Birkeland currents and create these see these creatures, what are we going to want to do most? Are we going to want to see past celebrities' lives? Are we going to want to see that everybody's wicked and crooked and sinful, and just we're going to realize that we're all on an even plateau to begin with, and you can't put anybody on a pedestal? I mean, we all fall short of the glory of God, basically, is what I'm saying. What are we going to find here when we are able to go into these? Basically, what I'm asking is what is going to be our excitement? What's going to be the dopamine trigger when we can start seeing the whole scale of cosmological systems unfold, from from the birth of it until the end of it? What part of it's going to be our favorite part to look at? Is it going to be Jesus's life? Is it going to be Benoit Mandelbrot's life? Because I think we're going to be able to dial into these channels like you can dial into a radio, but you can literally experientially feel them and hear them, and viscerally peek through the experience as a bird through the window, because we'll be inside of the bird. We'll literally be inside of the bird, because we'll be looking through the bird's eyes as a passive observer. So you as Brighton, and this is happening right now. I truly believe this is happening right now. People in the future are observing us, like I'm saying, through these neural networks. Love is watching, and it goes all the way through, and it scales, all scalar optics. That's why you can peer into a sphere and you can see forever. You can divine, you can do divination through smoke, and how smoke rises and how smoke moves. And that's how a lot of people, a lot of like Nostradamus and other people, have divined their future and their prognostications and their I guess psychic powers, for lack of better term. The reception's there. We can get in.
Getting connected to the universe, getting connected in with the grid. Okay, John Conway, he wrote a theory called Orch-or theory, and just briefly, very brief, it explains that our thoughts are constructed from electrons. They're
Okay.
not, we're not like a whole soul, but rather our consciousness is is impacted by electron source, by quantum phenomena, and a lot of this. And it's this consciousness is kind of an amalgamation of all that. So this brings upon a thought of if it's not the entirety of us, this one whole conscious soul, but are electrons conscious? Or, you know, if the experimenter has free will, then so does the experimentary particle, as John Conway states. And getting connected to the universe, I feel it's like becoming aware of electron superpositioning, or becoming aware as an electron itself, or multiple, rather than as the whole body, but to go down to source, where consciousness is more fundamental in the automaton.
So you're kind of sort of believe in a simulated universe, like simulation hypothesis, simulation theory.
Yeah.
And I tend towards a living, pulsating, organic, thriving network type of universe, which are two kind of separate. They're the same. You can have both. You can have both. I know that because my mind understands.
Cellular automaton, it's moving, it's breathing, it's functioning, it's doing all of that um, through math. And the math is not, see, the math is just an algorithm set of reaction. And the functions, they move through those reactions set by the algorithm, but there's no computation going on. It's just moving itself all by itself. There's no system trying to control it and change all certain sort of things, but rather it finds the best geometric way to go about things. And that's what our universe does, right? It finds the best geometric way to go about things. You have flowers doing the Fock ratio and all this other beautiful stuff.
Minimal energy configurations all the way down on all scales, and it's mimicry of minimal energy compression, and like Bernoulli's principle of water and flow. If you have a big huge gigantic thing, drum of like 50-gallon drum of water or something, or even bigger, and you have 5 different spigots, and each one of them's a different diameter, the pressure's going to, and you open all of them, pressure's going to come out of all of them equally, and distributed through all of the networks equally, through different size filaments. So Bernoulli's principle like reigns through plasma hierarchy in the configuration of things, and the minimal energy, minimal surface, minimal density, minimal sphere packing, minimal or maximum efficiency. But the minimal is what produces the maximal effect.
Like bubbles, how they So that's topological optimization, where it optimizes surface area for volume with the bubble packing. Just amazing, incredible stuff.
Yeah, that's how Terrence got into all of the stuff that he's working with. And Terrence's stuff is just by far absolutely out of this world, effing amazing. There's hardly any stuff that you can really get that's really concrete, as far as like his material. There needs to be, there's so much content that's coming out right now based off of his stuff and my stuff and a lot of other people's work. I'd love to see the linear progression and the vertical progression.
Okay.
And as well as with you, Brighton, the stuff that you're working on, is I think going to be the part of the cutting edge of breaking us into the next neosphere, the next mind, if shall I say. This boy's genius, guys. You're looking at him. Go ahead.
I'm gonna screen share.
Yes, please.
Okay. Now, this is getting a bit more in depth to the automaton and actually back to the Dougherty set, because this stuff is brilliant. How scaling works. So the Dougherty set, if we look at it from a sonosphere perspective. Now, let's see. Yeah, I'll pull up this right here. Okay, this is. I'll start here. I know how to start this. Back. Bingo. Right here. This is it. Okay. So sound, when we look at how sound works, it produces these waves, and those waves are constant. And it has.
Do you know what kind of waves they are? They're longitudinal and transverse waves.
And transverse waves. Okay.
Yeah. And scale. Well, you could call it longitudinal or scalar, but it produces both of those waves as well as a bunch of other types of waves, which is why it's kind of like the master frequency sound, because it moves through all sorts of barriers, whereas a lot of other waves can't.
So if you imagine an explosion coming down, like a nuke coming down, or an atomic bomb, and it creates a mushroom, but then it also creates these sonic waves or sonic booms. And the outside of the sonic boom is like a shell that pushes particles away.
Pressure. Yeah. Pressure wave. Yeah, pressure wave.
And the particles kind of get stuck on the wave in that sphere.
And it's toroidal. It's definitely toroidal, but like we were talking about this, it's like hemispherical if it's on the ground, right? And toroidal. But go ahead, sorry.
Okay. Well, wave density is how we look at scalar waves. Like this is showing a scalar wave right here. And at the peak is where there's particle density, but also at the peak is where the outside of a shell is.
Yes.
And these shells aren't just second dimensional. Actually, I had brought this photo up. This is a far better diagram of what sound or the explosion, the sonic boom, the wave is.
Yeah, I think that's Jason Verbelli's diagram, or it's from something that he's describing.
Wasn't it John Stewart's? Or
it could be. It could be. I know Jason Verbelli was using it when he was describing it, so that's where I got just as far as origins of the diagram go.
Okay, maybe they work together. I don't know.
Oh, it's probably John Stewart Reed's. You're right, but if Verbelli was working with it, he would just wrote something up about sound using this diagram. So go ahead.
Okay. Well, this beautiful diagram of what it does is it moves. So like when you speak out this sphere and it starts moving forwards, speed of sound, but it's creating these spheres from the center that are expanding by either harmonic or geometric expansion ratios.
Mm-hmm.
And they're consistent in concentricity. And if I go ahead and pull up the other video that I just had up, yep, this one right here, you can kind of see how the wave would work, how it moves across, expanding, and that.
Yes, and those shells are reminiscent of plasma double layers, plasma double layering that naturally happens. So the electricity would be like traveling along the green filament, but I guess plasma. I was using a weird analogy, but anyway, go ahead. What's this one?
Okay, if we make these shells like in that last video, the blue shell, the purplish blue shell, was a truncated octahedron. But in our universe, we find that sound and these other structures are more spherical in nature. So we can create hyperbolic sets where if any familiar with Michael Evans' work of expanding solids, breathing platonic solids.
Yes, breathing hyperbolic
Yeah.
platonic solids. Yeah.
And so in this, it's like kind of if you puff them full of air on the inside, it'd become a sphere. And then if you sucked it straight down, it would go straight down to the vertices.
Yes, Michael Evans, he's a good friend of mine, and he was the first guy I interviewed because on purpose, because he is a veteran in the field, and he's about as what some of the oldest you can get for a geometer, pushing new content that was well received, but still hasn't been turned into like I feel like hasn't received the recognition that he deserves, nowhere near. So I'm going to continue to scream from the top of the world about Michael Evans.
Oh yeah, I love his work. He's definitely been a huge inspiration for me.
Me too.
Now, the cellular automaton, it will expand like inhale and exhale to create these spheres or sucked in structures that have electrical potential. So if I put it this way, if you take a tetrahedron, or actually everybody knows what a cube is. If you take a cube and you were to expand it so it became a sphere, and you drop that in water, and then you made another one, and you were to suck in the plane faces inwards to the center, and you drop that one in water, which one do you think would go through the water faster? And it's the one that has the sucked in faces, the one that is inhaled.
Mm-hmm.
And it has more electric potential. Well, with all of these structures, they have that same concept. They'll have more electrical potential if they're sucked in or outwards.
Yeah, implosive or explosive potentials.
Beautiful. Rarefaction and
compression.
Compression. Okay. This is a whole new concept to that. It shows how these solids morph between each other. So this video, it shows a cuboctahedron, a truncated octahedron, and an octahedron. And it morphs between all three of those. And it shows how the frostrum settings, or if you look at them as bipyramids, expand or contract. And the expansion and contraction of these pyramids, the square center in the bipyramid, the center of the bipyramid, is where the particle density is. And you can look at the bipyramid then as a form of a weight, like a scalar weight. And so if I go ahead and I pull up, let's see. Yeah, there's a video I've done on this where I take that exact honeycomb, but there's not just that one. No, there are so many ways in which honeycombs morph between one another. Here is the video. Bingo. Okay. And you'll have this filling space. There's no gaps left between. And so it's actual maximum spherical packing with different honeycombs and different sets. And if we set a cellular automaton through this morphing structure, we can get into exactly how the universe works in all of its amplitudes.
Now I see more exactly what you mean about the cellular automata. Why don't you show the audience what a cellular automata is and the basics of it, so that they can kind of start to wrap their heads around how pixelation or these individual cubes can be used to as Hausdorff dimensions for these cellular automata to move throughout. So what I'm thinking is those are like individual cubes, and you you could program a cube to have this moving through it, sure, like slime mold. Like slime mold about 10 years ago or more, they did an experiment with showing Tokyo's runways, the best way and most efficient paths slime mold created through the city, and then they did it time and time again, and it shows the most efficient path for the least resistance through anything. The slime mold does. And these cellular automata, I think, maybe in my mind, could act as these space filling nerves and neural networks to move through the cubes. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah. There can be a way. The math would get a lot more complex than this system, than Conway's doing. But yeah.
Press play so we can see what this does here.
Okay.
Tell us.
This video is a wonderful video for understanding it, but I'm not going to play the whole thing. But you start off with one cube, and there's certain rules, like if you have a neighbor. So if you have a, let's see, if that cell is, a cell is either on or off. If it's white, it's off. If it's black, it's on. If it has a neighbor, it turns off. If it has two neighbors, the center turns off, but then it puts two more neighbors to the three-part neighbor, whatever. And it creates structures like this is a stable structure, this is a moving structure, and it actually moves just like, if I can go ahead and fast forward to where it gets actually moving, it moves like a particle would across space. Seems my computer has, oh, there we go, it's right here. Yeah. Bingo. And so particles would move like that. And you'll have these crazy configurations with these automatons. Some people are even creating words and beautiful stuff out of them, but yeah, they create structures that are life systems. Or as if they're alive.
Yeah.
And it's biology from a very simple
iterative point of view.
Well,
it's not iterative, it's kind of.
Here, I'm gonna go full screen back to Skype.
I mean, it kind of reminds me of Wolf, who was it? Stephen Wolfram and his New Science.
Yes. Yeah, Wolfram, he, no, that was, continue on. I'm thinking of someone else.
It might be, I think his name was Stephen Wolfram, but it was a new science of, and it basically came down to like pixelations and natural dendritic forms that form in the computer. What was his name? Do you know who I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about, but I'm spacing the name.
Oh man. Anyway, so yeah, it kind of reminds me of the stuff that he was doing, because you can almost create any form and any fractal based off of simple iterations, and that's kind of what that's kind of the summation that I got from his book. Is that all of these complex forms and variations are just broken down into simple math, like the math of chaos and math of fractal patterns. It breaks down to very simple mathematical, I guess, habits. I like to say not laws. I use habits because laws can break and often do.
Okay. Yes. Quantum. Okay. Back to automaton, with the concept about it and how a universe could be composed of it. There's a problem with a lot of our algorithms. If you ever draw an automaton, well, first off, they get insanely complex with even very simple algorithms, but they don't have what we call choice, if you'd say that. So, and there's a way to change that. Um, so the freedom of choice, or cognitive dissonance, I can have an apple and I can have an orange, but I can only have one. I can go one direction or the other, you know. Which one do I do? And in a cellular automaton, if with quantum computing, if we take a coin and we flick it and it starts rotating, it's in that dissonant state between 1 and 0, between heads and tails. And all computational systems are ones and zeros, but if it's between, it's neither. So it's kind of like 1 and 0 superimposed. And so it works as both. And in a system, an automaton where we have quantum functions, where a square based on a certain set that's going on around it, it can either go here or it can go there. It completely changes how the automaton works and allows, well, a lot more deadly mistakes, as well as a lot of ways that it can, you know, bring life upon itself. And when we create a quantum cellular automaton, we've created a conscious structure.
That's exactly what a plasmoid is, or like I guess a resonant. What did Eric? Bostic. Bostic was the one who defined a plasmoid as a magnetic entity, and so it's like a wrapped up, energetic source, like a spirit almost. And a lot of people now in the electric universe paradigm are starting to realize that, yeah, of course ghosts exist. Of course there's angels and demons and all of this, because there's magnetic memories all over. There's
Yeah, I'd put it that there's a potential for electron amalgamations in the universe, or electron anomalies. But yeah, memory in the universe, ghosts, but they're not. See, it's not like your grandmother is really coming back to haunt you and wants to murder you. It's more like an electrical anomaly, where there's an occurrence that reoccurs because of some electrical phenomena going on in that area, that is generative to a past occurrence, or memory in that area.
Yeah, and a lot of people have this. Some people call it. Now I can't remember. What's the word? An empath. If you're empathetic or an empath, then you're more sensitive to the what's, I guess, there. You could call it cosmic microwave background, CMB, or cosmic microwave background radiation, that's always everywhere. But women are in tune to it a lot. Some people call it ESP, and it's clearly tapping the field. But how deep can you tap the field, and how much can you teach others how to tap the field in a positive feedback loop, not for just you, but for the universe and for other people, you know? And that's ultimately what gurus are. That's ultimately what all of shamans and everybody is. If you think about it, they tell you that you can do this. That's all they tell you. You can do this. You can do this. You can do this better than I can. And then they produce greater people than they were. And that's the whole concept of it, is to create better people than ourselves. That's generativity ultimately, and looking after the next generation. But people rarely talk about that.
This reminds me of, I believe it's called EMH, which is electromagnetic hypersensitivity.
Okay.
Now, my mom, my wonderful girlfriend, they both suffer from this, and many other people in the world. It's not very well known yet, but it is known, very well known, that if you're in front of a microwave, it can give you breast cancer. It can give you horrendous things, and it's the frequencies, the radiation. So your cell phone or Wi-Fi or any signal like radio frequencies, all these signals that go on around us, they are disruptive to our neurological body. Some of them can be.
Yes, some of them can be for sure.
And like the Zigbee router on the, in very particular, on a smart meter, which they're putting on every house, when it sends out a signal, the frequency that it's in is similar to this frequency of 5G that's coming out, the new 4G, 5G, and it can stop your heart because of the frequencies that it sends through. It creates a disruption in your neurological field, and that can cause problems in your heart. But in relation to EMH and ESP, did you say?
Yeah.
We're electrical beings, and of course our emotions are electrical, as or back to orchard theory,
And our thoughts.
Yeah, it's all electrical.
Yeah, and we don't have our thoughts have us.
Yeah.
We're not the ones having them. So
go ahead.
No, that's all I wanted to say. Go.
Yeah.
And you were going into the electric, we're electric beings, you were saying.
Yeah. And so if our thoughts, because see, our thoughts in the model of science with superpositioning and quantum entanglement and all this wacky stuff going on, the electrons the electrons in my head are also in my phone right at this very minute because they're superpositioned between both places, and that's absurd. I don't know, thousands of them are in my phone at the same time. What the hell is going on? They're in my buddy's brain. I'm talking to them all the way across the world, and they're in his brain too.
Yeah, right now they're beaming out. Well, as soon as this is out to the world, it's going to be even more beaming out.
Well, of course.
And that's how they can read your brain. The phones can read your thoughts, and there's already a whole bunch of patents about it. So go ahead. This is cool.
Yeah, well, it brings out that really like a science behind empathy. Instead of it just being a social construct or whatever, it actually brings out a science that perhaps the electrical field that I produce can concern my dog, and she can become upset if I'm upset.
Oh yeah.
And
this is Rupert Sheldrake. This is his morphic. You know about that, yeah.
I mean, I've heard it before. I sit down on the couch and I have a big sigh, and then right after I go, the dog goes too. It's straight after.
Yeah. That's induction. It's induced like a yawn. A yawn is induced from one energy moving from one being to another, and one person enervates that from the room. They pull the whole energy from the entire room into their mouth and expand their jaw, and that piezoelectric expansion of their jaw locks something inside of their brain that wakens them. I don't know the exact what it does, but at the same time everybody else has to do the exact same thing, because it's like a lung. It's like I breathe in, and bitch, we're all gonna breathe in because we're the same lung. Like that's awesome.
The electrical universe, the universe, as if it's a construct of if, and this is absurd to say it, but if we are all one superpositioned electron throughout the entire universe,
The theory of one electron or the theory of one.
yeah, okay, it's kind of just yeah, um, or just one. If we're one amalgamate sum, or it might
Yeah.
be smaller than an electron, but
Well, someone proposed that. Are you aware of that?
yeah, I am. I don't know if if in physics it's accurate though.
Right. I was looking into it, and something about the theory of one element or something,
Yeah.
and that being an electron, and it traces the whole entire universe constantly, all the time, creating it.
If it is all one superpositioned electron, um, a, a huge component of the DMT experience from the poison ivy was there was this humongous serpent, and I was in this abyss, this pitch black abyss, and this humongous serpent was coming up to me, and I realized that I was the serpent, and the serpent was me at the same time, and it was swallowing me. It was swallowing me right there, and this, uh, inside the serpent, there was everything, absolutely everything. Um, it was as if being inside of a bubble, but that state was aware of every occurrence in the universe throughout all time, and all possible occurrences throughout all multiverses, and just everything. And it was in all of those places at once. It was everywhere. It was like it was the electron that was sourced everywhere throughout the entire universe. And this thought came back to me with the serpent swallowing the being itself being throughout the entire universe, or this whole thing. And I had this saying, which is that the abyss, the darkness, the abyss is an endless and all-engulfing entropy of universal expression. That it's really powerful now how I feel entropy, what entropy is, because everything that we do, every time you draw something on a piece of paper or whatever you do, it takes away from what can be done, because it can't be done again. It can never be done again. Just like how with one electron, it's called superpositioned, because you can't have two electrons doing the exact same thing without it being the same electron itself.
So you don't. So your research and studies don't lead you to believe a multiple universe theory. It's a theory of one universe, or what? Because I don't believe in multiple. I mean, my studies don't show that it's a multiple. We might perceive it as multiple universes, but it's one.
I am not determined on either yet.
Yeah.
I like the theory of both. I like them both.
Yeah, the multiverse.
Yeah. But yes, the synesthesia, just if we are able to tap into, if we are all one construct, actually, this brings us to something about dimensions. A very weird thing about dimensions. If you take a cube, okay, and you divide it into second-dimensional planes. So you take a second-dimensional plane and you stack it, one on top of the next, one on top of the next. These second-dimensional planes are supposed to have zero depth. Okay, they have height, they have width, but they have zero depth. Yet they're able to fill that depth that the cube has when they're stacked, space filling. 0 plus 0 equals 0, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
The whole thing is, I think it's hollow.
Yeah.
There's nothing. There's no solids.
And when we break this down into the second dimension, it's composed of these lines that are, stacked one after another, after another, after another, together. And it's 0 plus 0 plus 0. But, they're supposed to fill space because that square or that second dimensional plane can be divided into those lines, bisected anywhere. And that's proof that that these lines fill out space. And then we can apply that for the first dimension to the 0th dimension, or an angle. An angle, there can be no such thing. So if we look at an angle, there's the angle itself, and then the reflection, or should I call it the imaginary reflection? Because if no such thing in the universe can be the same thing without being the same thing itself. So like, if I have 2 water bottles, or 2 pens, beautiful. They can't be the same thing without being the same thing themselves, and these two are not the same thing. But
what if they eat each other in nature?
What if they eat each other?
Yeah. What if like it's not a pen and it's 2 birds and one bird eats the other bird? Then you can be both.
What if the electrons inside the bird and the electrons inside the snail, okay, are the same electrons? They're only one electron. They just have different computations going through them, in like a holographic set that's non-existent space. Space makes no sense. And this theory of stacking, or with the one dimension, how it has infinite 0th dimensional points in it, it goes back up in dimensions as well. You see, you take a cube and you do that with the 4th dimension, or you take a hypercube and you do that with the 5th dimension. No dimensions can be filled out of anything. They're all absolutely non-existent. They're all equal to 0.
Well, in all this mathematics, but yeah, in reality, you can look at soil and you can see layers of soil, and that's ultimately not even the creatures that deteriorate into the soil. It becomes these one-dimensional nodes of little sand and soil, and then it turns into creatures that deteriorate and get eaten by other creatures. So it's really like sustainable, and the dimensions itself, it's all hollow. The center of everything is hollow. It's like Ouroboros, just constantly. It's strange. It's strange. It really is strange.
The Walter Russell. I've been doing a little bit of reading, but most of just being there at the museum. I am. So much has been going through my mind, so much, and I've just been trying to sort it all.
Yeah, dude, the man, like, oh my goodness, good Lord.
There was a diagram of his that was just blew my mind away. And then listening to some people talk about the mechanics of it, straight away, I was like,
that was Darren.
This is
the truth.
It was exactly like the experience, seeing how the structure bends over. And I'd like to get into this a little bit, but it was exactly like the DMT trip. They were exactly the same.
We're gonna do a lot more talks for sure, but I do have to start getting ready for this. So eventually, give me a little summation, a little wrap up here, and we'll dap up into another interview on a different time here.
All right. Well,
sorry to just be so bold and hop up in the center of it like that.
No,
I was gonna let it unfold naturally, but it could go forever.
Yeah, really good. Yeah.
You were talking about what did you leave off with? What were you saying? I forget.
That the universe could potentially be a synesthetic singularity.
Okay. And that makes a lot of sense, because if you think of Bruce Lee's philosophy, and you think of just like in general, why did he have to die? There's some beautiful things surrounding that type of Eastern thinking, an Eastern Taoist type of way, where it is mirroring, so you can know to become. And then that's also Native American in culture, because you reflect your image inside of creatures, and you remember your life cycles through eagles, and you get your totems, you earn your totems. And I don't know, I kind of want to go back to a lifestyle where you get out of high school or college, and you keep graduating through different layers. And I guess that's kind of like Freemasonic, but that's like a men's fraternity or whatever. And it's like there's different ways to continue to accelerate and unfold spiritually and dynamically.
I think this is a good note to end on.
This is what it is, okay? As I empty your mind, be formless, shapeless, like water. So you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow, or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
Amen. What a perfect way to end it.
Oh yeah.
All right, Brighton. This marks our first of many more to come. Love to have you on board, and to those of us, to anybody out there, we are starting. There is in works with other people involved as well. Tech insiders podcast where we actually show you our processes of our backgrounds, of how we like get into creating the work, and show off the equations and other stuff ahead of time before we launch them to the public, so you can have inside access to what Brighton himself here is discovering inside of the Dougherty set, the Dougherty network, and other things that he's discovering on his own. This kid's lit.
Buddy.
What's that?
I'm writing some good equations, buddy.
I've seen, and yeah, they're gonna continue to flow. I got faith in this cat right here. And
where can we find this site? Where can we find this work?
I will be posting it and sharing it with you. I just posted a podcast last night, or an episode last night, episode 13. So you are episode 14, my friend. 14's a good number.
Yeah. Send the video to me and I'll edit it.
I don't really edit them. It's just straightforward, as real as it gets, raw, just like this, straightforward. I don't think there was anything I don't think there was one thing off. So I mean, it will send you the video immediately. Both of us will get a copy. That's what Skype does. And then, yeah, it's really nice. Whenever you record, it sends anybody who's on the call a copy of the video. It's really tight, and anybody can start recording at any time, but it also shows everybody who's recording. That's a cool feature of Skype. So I'm going to turn this into an episode. You can even turn it into your own episode, but for our sake now, we're just going to keep it in these parameters until we start branching off into our new thing. So please, when you guys, this is how I'm going to try to start making my living, is off of these podcasts. Of course, I have all my other companies and things that I do. You can buy material and artwork from me and Brighton. And there's a website available, THEU, the letter U.ONE. And I'm going to start working and using that site more and directing traffic towards that, because that's what this podcast is the universal ones. And the U.1 resonates with part of our message that we were talking about today, with the universe being one electron. And we've talked about this. I've talked about this before with other friends, but not on any podcasts yet. It tends to be the mathematicians that bring out this kind of stuff. All right, brother. That was awesome.
Much love.
Love you, man.
I
And
love
it's awesome to see that morel necklace on you, man. I got to get you guys another one so both you guys can have one.
Thank you, buddy. Have a good
Amen.
one.
Amen. Love you guys. Talk to you soon. Bye. All right. There you have it, folks. Boom. Episode 14, Season 1. Killing it. Brighton Kotter. Who knows where we're going to go. Maybe even odder than this next. All I know is love is watching. Thank you for doing that. See you on the next episode. Like, share, comment. This is how it works. Thank you for being you.